On today's podcast, we talked about how to not use social media as your therapy couch. In all actuality, we talked about the difference between intimacy and authenticity, but how to also ensure that your content and the assets that you're producing are creating the results that you want in alignment and setting you up to win with some incredible frameworks to start asking yourself how to make your earned media effective and all the content you produce effective to make sure you're continuing to build your brand, your legacy, and all the positive things. I talked about a lot of that stuff in this very short episode, and there is a how part of this episode that comes this Friday in episode 367 with Scout. And so this is important because the how will make so much sense in all the areas you can apply it and get the results. So without further ado, I'm going to stop bumping my gums. Let's get into the episode. Welcome back to another episode of the Mind of George show, where I'm sipping a cold coffee in the middle of making a packing list for Austin, Texas, because I believe if you are hearing this, it's the day the event ended. So I'm packing up to head to the event in 2 days to start getting ready for the Lighthouse Business Accelerator, the best customer journey event in the world with the best rock, paper, scissors tournament. But I am sitting here just getting really excited about that. And so for all of you coming, or actually, no matter what, for all of you who came, it was an honor. It was a pleasure. I hope we hugged and high-fived a lot and you get everything you wanted. And for those that didn't, make sure you go to the waiting list on our website. The next one will be in Montana, most likely in October. And it will sell out like they always do. And so that is at mindofgeorge.com/event. It's also just linked on the homepage at Mind of George. So today, what do I want to talk about? So before I tell you that, let me tell you where this episode came from. So I just had the incredible opportunity to interview somebody who I now call a friend, Scout. And with Scout, we dedicated an entire episode to talking about earned media, the power of it. And in my opinion, it's one of the most powerful tools that an entrepreneur can have in their arsenal. And in that lens of talking about podcasting and earned media and content and how to be effective and turn it into an asset, a lot of that conversation led to what's kind of underneath the content. And we got into this conversation about intimacy versus authenticity. And this is a topic that's come up hundreds of times for people I've coached, people that have shared lessons with me, things I've gotten coaching on, lessons I've learned. And so I want to talk about it a bit because I think this is huge. Social media is not going away. Content's not going away. Video's not going away. In my opinion, if you want to give yourself every advantage possible to win in today's day and age, you have to be producing content, irregardless of your business, for different reasons for everybody, but primarily video or some form of content in a consistent basis. And it's a very valuable asset because content isn't just for distribution. It's also documenting a diary of your growth in your life. It's giving you an unlimited bank of content and ideas to pull from. It's evergreen and repurposed hundreds and hundreds of times. It's the content that your lead magnets are created from. It's the content that gets put into your email sequences for your customer journey. It's the content that sparks other creative ideas that leads to the best marketing idea you've ever had. Like it's a very powerful thing. But in understanding that, most of where we disseminate our content is in the world of social media. And when social media was created, social media was not created as a business tool. Social media was created as a personal tool, a place for your friends in college to post on your wall and a place on Instagram to share your snaps of the world with pretty filters. And over time, when they garnered the amount of attention that they did and they realized the monetization capacity of that vehicle, well, then it became a business platform. And so there's people that use that platform for their personal life, and there's people like us that use that platform for our business life. And then there are people like us that use it for both, where we have our personal life, and some of us have personal accounts, and we share different stories or opinions or feelings or anything along those lines. And in that, and in the 14 years I've been on social media, 2009, 2010, so 13 years I've been on social media, I've learned a lot of lessons. And one of the most valuable lessons I've ever learned is that social media is not my therapy couch. Now, I am fully aware that in some of my content and this podcast, I have made it my therapy couch. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing. it's something that I'm working on, which is why I'm sharing this on the podcast. I do it a whole lot less now than I did. But I got to give full credit to a gentleman who inspired this thought, Tucker Max. I was in one of Tucker's workshops with him. We were planning something out, but I was going through the process of like outlining a potential book, and I kept coming to this one section. I was getting stuck, and every time I got stuck, I'd start crying. And Tucker came up to me, asked me a couple questions, and he looked at me and he's like, "Well, here's the challenge." He said, "You can't write a book that you're still in the middle of." And he let me sit with it, and it truly, truly made sense to me, because I was trying to tell a story about something that I didn't have enough evidence to share about yet, because I was still in the middle of it. And there's a difference between telling a story while trying to teach it to somebody else or getting somebody else to read it, or telling somebody that you're in the middle of a story and here's what you're experiencing. And one of them is effective and one of them is ineffective. And the difference comes down to what I categorize as intimacy versus authenticity. And the way that I think about content, the way that I think about this valuable asset, this invaluable asset that we're creating into the world, irregardless of how good it is or what the video looks like, trust me, you can't go wrong if you focus on creating content and working on making it better. But in that world, we have to understand that we're really creating it to serve a purpose. And at the core of it, it can be simplified down to a couple of things. Number one is we're creating it to create connection, right? So that content is being created to connect with people, okay? Another option, another reason is that we're using it to educate people, to challenge people's thinking, to give them a different way to think, to give them a tool, right? There's a lot of reasons that we're using that content. There's a lot of reasons that we're posting it out into the world. And with that, we understand that there is a purpose to that content. And so what we use is we use life experience and stories and metaphors and things that we've read and things that we've learned and philosophies and things that we've garnered and gathered through our lens to now share into the world. And its effectiveness boils down to the integrity of it being shared. And the reason I say that is because I've made the mistake quite often in the past of when somebody asked me about my story on a podcast, I would share the story of my sexual abuse. And without being prompted, I would share the details of it. And it took me years to recognize that the details that were my journey and my story actually dissipated the effectiveness of my message, because I've healed that wound. But when I went into the story, it made it about me and people having compassion for me. I wasn't seeking or wanting that compassion, but it also didn't make it about the thing that I was sharing with them, because the detail was too far. It was something I was still in the middle of. And so this concept of like, you can't teach a story or write a story or write a book that you're still in the middle of doesn't mean you can't talk about the book that you're writing. It means that you have to be intentional about why you're talking about it. You can be learning lessons when you're in the middle of them. Like I'm in the middle of a lawsuit right now and I'm learning a lot of lessons. We're in the middle of changing 3PLs. So I'm not going to go launch a course on how to set up a perfect 3PL, but I might, share some content around here's what I'm learning and here's my lesson. And so we have to understand that when we're creating this content, we're creating it for one of those reasons. And the effectiveness boils down to our ability to recognize when we're creating it. It's our job to make it consumable and implementable to the other person, and we have to have an intention for that content. Now, there are times where our intention could be, I want to share a part of my story in hopes of helping them see this or achieve this. Or our intention could be, I want to share with my audience what I'm currently going through and seeing if they resonate with it. It's the come from that makes a big difference. And that come from is what makes your content or these assets that you're creating effective or ineffective, right? I talk a lot about consistency and congruency being one of the secrets to scale. And that's because as an entrepreneur, you're speaking to a lot of people. You're sharing with a lot of people. You're meeting a lot of people. You're meeting customers. You're meeting business partners. You're going to events. You're meeting entrepreneurs. You are conversing with a lot of people. And in those conversations with those people, you are repeating a lot of your same passions and your beliefs and the things that you do. And then those people are turning around and repeating them to other people. And when those things get repeated, when they match and they're repeatable because something took something from it, that becomes a secret weapon in your arsenal. But they can only match when your come from for why you're sharing is really aligned and honest. And so I wanted to talk about this because I'm in the middle of some challenges in my life as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a husband, as a father, and some of them are coasting smooth and I feel like I've mastered them, and other ones feel like I'm in kindergarten. And so I have no problem right now telling you, like, oh yeah, I'm working on this with my kids and I'm working on doing this with my wife. But it doesn't mean like all the details of all of it matters. But in sharing that, it might trigger something like, oh yeah, man, I actually should be working on that with mine too, right? But I'm not pretending to give the Bible or the doctrine or like this is how you do it or I have it all figured out. I'm being integrous about my situation, just like on this podcast before and other shows. Someone's been like, "Well, how would you describe yourself as a husband?" And I'm like, I'd give myself a B plus today, and as a dad, I'd give myself an A. And there's other days where it's a C. And I think it's the come from that makes it so different. And I say this because as entrepreneurs, in my opinion, social media is dangerous. If your come from or my come from when getting on the platform is not from a place of, I feel good about myself, I'm confident, I'm proud of myself, every single thing that I consume is going to have zero positive benefit or gain on me. And yes, I might occasionally see a motivational quote, but I'm no way, shape, or form in denial about the fact that I'm also going to start getting comparisonitis and then start thinking that I'm procrastinating and start getting upset about it. And so I think it's really, really important to recognize that these emotions that we have, these feelings that we have, these things that come up, we're growing as humans, we're growing as entrepreneurs as we're in the process of building our businesses, as we're in the process of adding strategies and tactics and learning how to lead a team and having failures and successes. Like we're growing and changing as human beings. And in that, our presence in the business, in the world that we live in right now, like every ounce of our choices and our decisions are documented, they're made public. And I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, this is something I talk about on the podcast a lot. I think one of your greatest weapons is stillness. It's your ability to exist with yourself, to find clarity before you make decisions, to make sure that you're confident in that decision that you're going to make. And that applies to this podcast today. It's understanding that social media is a tool. And if you want to use it as a tool in your personal life, use it. But if you're going to use it as a tool in your business, you have to understand the weight that that tool carries and how to use that tool effectively. And I think for a lot of us, it's just as simple as a reminder, because there's times I've been on social media on a live video and started sharing a story and then caught myself in the moment. I was like, whoa, sorry guys, hold on. And I like recorrected it and it became this funny moment. It actually became like one of my famous keynotes. But it's just recognizing that it's a journey and it's messy and it's okay to be messy, but it's really just reminding ourselves of the come from. Like, am I acting at my best and highest? Are these actions I'm taking aligned with my vision, right? Like I love when Scott Oldford was on the show, he said twice a day he has an alarm go off on his phone, and I know this to be true. And in that moment, it says, are the actions you're currently taking aligned with your vision? And like, what a powerful reminder. It's not that he doesn't know. It's not that you don't know. It's not that I don't know. It's not that I don't understand that there's probably nothing for me to gain when I'm an emotional breakdown because I think my wife is leaving me, to go on social media and do a live video about all of it. Like there's nothing for me to gain there. That's not the place I'm going to get my answers, but it doesn't mean I haven't thought about it a few times or maybe done it once or twice. I'm eerily embarrassed to admit that. But but I have done it. I have done it. And so the reason I'm sharing this is I think this is so important because it's not in the details, but it's in your ability to encapsulate the things that you're sharing for context, to apply it for the people listening, for them to gain a lesson or a takeaway. And so a lot of the times what I remind myself of is that even though I'm in this moment of maybe turmoil or pain or something that doesn't feel great, if I use my practices correctly, read the book The Gap and the Gain if you haven't, I can reflect for a moment and I can find my gain and I can realize the gain that I've made. And when I realize the gain that I've made, I have a very different perspective because I can remember what it was like to be in my client's shoes. I can remember what it was like to feel that way. And yes, I feel similar to that now, but the circumstances are different. And it's in my willingness to like explore that and dance with that and try it on for size that really gives the clarity that helps me understand myself, understand my customer, and really connect with them on a level that's going to make the content I'm producing effective. And so I say this too because one important lesson that I teach, and I haven't talked a lot about lately, is that we also have to understand that in the world that we live in business, where we spend a majority of our life marketing ourselves, right, creating content, sharing it, posting it, every which way, shape, or form, in that, irregardless of what you're doing, you are conditioning behaviors and expectations for your consumers. And you also want to be intentional about what you're creating in the world so that you don't create an expectation of drama or shock and awe or controversy or things that aren't hills that you're really willing to die on or aren't aligned with your business. Like there's so many famous stories of people who built their social media following and audience and engagement by posting cat memes, and then they tried to launch a product even in the same category and it didn't work. Or content producers that built their entire career on drama and then it like sucked the soul out of them, and they tried to change their channels and their business to soul stuff and they lost the business. And so I think it's really, really important to understand that, every choice we make, every decision we make is either moving us closer to that best version of ourselves, to that version of ourselves that we want to be, to that business, to our goal, or it's moving us one step further away. And this really isn't about being upset that I chose to take a step further away or being mad at myself that I didn't step towards my vision. It's just ensuring that every day that I wake up, that I give myself the space to reflect, to analyze the ones where I didn't choose to step towards my vision, and make sure that I step towards my vision more times than I stepped away from my vision. And there's days where that gap is huge. There's days where that gap is not huge. There's days where they're equal. And there have been plenty of days where I've stepped in the direction away from my vision intentionally for a series of days. But the only thing that recovered it was when I recognized it and I started to intentionally choose to take some behaviors that were going to move me closer towards my vision and closer towards my dreams. And so I think when we recognize that, when we understand that, or at least for me, when I think about this, when I reflect on this, that puts me in a very big position of power because I do have a platform and I do have a voice and I do have an audience and I love helping. But if I say I'm going to help, I need to be in integrity with what that means. And if there's days that I can't help, I need to be like, hey, I can't help today, but I just wanted to turn on the video because I just wanted to get this off my chest. And the level of accountability that comes with that is one of the greatest gifts that you could ever have in the world. And so I think this is awesome, and it's a perfect place to wrap this episode because I wanted to end this episode with the how. Okay, George, this makes sense. I got it. I believe more in your woo-woo or whatever you want to call it. But how do I actually do this? And so here's the best part. In this Friday's episode, we actually broke down the how with Scout. We literally started with giving you the exact questions that you need to ask yourself to reflect on to create these awarenesses, to make sure that you're not using your social as a therapy couch, that all the assets that you're creating are effective, that the come from is there. And it's really, really powerful because irregardless if you're listening to this, there's a chance you're creating content, you're going to keep creating content. And one of the easiest ways to ensure you win this game is that when you make that content, that you ensure that you are giving it every single chance it has to be successful. And if you listen to this episode with Scout and listen to the how and reflect on these questions, I guarantee you the only thing that can happen is a positive gain in your business or life. And so the how is in this coming Friday's episode. So I think that's episode 367. I'm guessing, could be close. Hope so. It'll be with Scout. And so that's what I got for today's episode. So I'm going to go make my packing list. I'm going to finish that stuff up. I'm going to complete my cold coffee. If you're watching this on video, you can see my pink Tims. I love them. I don't care what people say. It is snowing outside. I have pink Tims on with tan shorts and a black hoodie, but I love them. They make my heart happy. So I'm going to keep wearing them. So you didn't need to know that. That added no value to today's podcast. But I wanted to share anyways. So wherever you are in the world, whatever you're doing right now, just know this and let this hit your heart. I appreciate the fuck out of you, and you are awesome. You're amazing. Let this be a bright moment in your day, in your life. I appreciate you. Remember that relationships will always beat algorithms, especially the one with yourself. I will either see you in the next episode or you will hear me in your earballs. But either way, we're done with this one.